We on?
And we are live. Good morning, good evening, and good afternoon. Welcome to another episode of Living World of Darkness, Street Magic Venue. Tonight's scene is between Dr. Scott Osborne and Conrad Kurz. They are still working on their project, so to speak, maintaining and repairing as much as they can the transformer in the military hangar garage type thing that Osborne seems to have appropriated for himself. It's not far away from the deadline of their project, but they have a chance to catch up and talk after the day's research. Conrad would be most likely just sitting at a workstation, checking over his findings, fixing a few bugs in the software, and then just kind of laying back like, eh.
Same. Dr. Osborne is pretty much kind of cleaning up the station. He's a horrific coffee fiend, so he's already made himself a cup of coffee and is sitting there just kind of drinking it away as he's like removing his lab coat and whatnot.
That shit's habit forming.
Yep. Trust me, I know. I come from a long line of addicts. Luckily, I chose caffeine over alcohol or drugs.
I suppose. He seems fairly tired, not to be reflected by the fact the player's a little bit out of it. But he seems a little bit tired, even not ready to fall over or anything just yet. Maybe he didn't get as much sleep last night. It's like, so now that we actually have a chance to talk, all right, so we already did the whole introduction thing. Anyone told you to lay the land out here yet?
Well, I have to confess that you all were the first mages I've met outside of my the Aetherites who inducted me into our little society. Basically, I mean,
that's cute. You think you have a society? Just kidding. Sorry.
We are the Society of Ether, but either way.
Full respect to the Aetherites. Trust me, I love their gadgets. It's not always my cup of tea, but highly respect your science. All right. So, things you need to know.
Mm-hmm.
Don't go into the Bronx. Don't go into Central Park. Don't go to Staten Island. And if you're going to go to Manhattan, be cautious.
Okay, is there a particular reason why, or is it just not that really pretty after dark?
Pick one and I'll tell you why.
Okay, let's start with one of the more obvious. Let's start with the Bronx.
Demons.
Fair. I mean, Dr. Osborne just kind of like scratches his head and be like, okay. Okay, how about Central Park?
Werewolves.
Okay. They tend to carve out a very small part of their for themselves, didn't they?
Yeah, I know.
What were the other ones? Staten Island?
Staten Island, the way it's been explained to me, has a lot of horrible things. I'm not sure specifically what those horrible things are, but I was basically told if I'm stupid enough to go there, there won't be a rescue party.
A lot of horrible things. Well,
and given that the other options are werewolves and demons, and Manhattan is vampires, yeah, if they think that's quote-unquote horrible things, then yeah, I don't even want to think about it. So I'm just staying the hell out of Staten.
Okay, that's fair. So, quick question, are werewolves particularly hostile towards us? Last I checked, they tend to be more pissy with vampires.
Yes, they are. I couldn't tell you the theological reasons behind it. I'm not an expert, but I've never spoken to one. I don't know if any of the locals have. I get the impression there has been some communication, but I couldn't tell you anything about it. I will say that by and large, we tend to have similar interest in nodes, I guess. We like nodes. They want nodes. They fight us for them sometimes. So, yeah, I'm willing to bet there's probably one in Central Park, and if they caught a mage sniffing about, they'd probably think we're there to take it. And would probably not stop, or hesitate to kill us.
Fair.
No idea why the demons are territorial. Don't care. No idea why the vampires are territorial. Don't care. But, I also don't want to get, skinned alive, so.
Fair. Like, from what my friends have told me is that werewolves are not one to fuck with, so I won't push that issue either.
Like I said, I've never seen one, but I've heard stories about 9-foot tall raging walls of fur and teeth. So I kind of don't want to see it myself.
So Dr. Osborne sits down, sips his coffee, finally kind of relaxing a little bit after a long day. And he says, so what's the deal around here with mages? I'm assuming there's more than just the four of us who happen to run into each other while working on a car.
There's a few. There's an Akashic named Ken. There's a hollow one named Tomi Lovechild. And her, I don't know what the relation is, or I don't know if they're related or involved. But there's a fellow named Alaric Lovechild. I don't know if he's a hollow one or something else. I haven't really seen him do much, but I know he's got anger management issues. And then there's I think there's a couple Verbena. There's several ecstatics, and they're rather knife happy. And there's a more experienced virtual adept in town by the name of the Intern.
The Intern.
And, yes. And there's it's a title as I understand it. And there's a few others. One of our number was just attacked actually recently, though we're not sure what faction did it. Or group. May not have been a faction at all. We think it may have just been an individual. But there's a few others. Anyways, and of course now there's Casper, yourself, and Aiden. Aiden's going to need a little sheltering, I think, because he's very eager, and I don't know if it's sunk in just how dangerous our world is.
Yeah. I mean, I admit I took a liking to the boy. I shouldn't say. I took a liking to Aiden. You can tell he doesn't mean like in any derogatory sense. He's used to calling like any student, kids' names, whatnot.
Oh yeah.
Says, I took a liking to him the first moment I met him, and I'd really like to work with him. You know what I mean?
No, he's certainly not unintelligent. My main concern is that he's, well, let's just say when I was discussing plans with him, his first reaction was to dive in head first. Now, that's all well and good to have a very proactive attitude, but there's such a thing as wanting to investigate a little first, be a little cautious. Anyways, okay. Speaking of which, those same plans, there are a couple chantries in town, as I understand it. They tend to be rather secretive, for obvious reasons. I'm currently a member of one, run by Tomi Lovechild, the hollow one. There are a couple others who are members. The Akashic Ken, Alaric, Maggie, a few others. But the point is, I am only a member there until such time as I get my own chantry set up. I've already been fortunate enough to find and help clear out a location, though someone else did the hard work for me before I got there. It's a abandoned church, and out of character, I don't know which borough it's in. I'm going to assume it's somewhere in Queens. It's apparently connected to some sort of subdimension or pocket realm, which is accessible through a doorway in the basement. There's a doorway in the basement. It reads, "Abandon all hope, ye who enter here," in Italian.
Interesting.
Yeah. The former owner of the house apparently was something of a fan of Dante's Inferno. And anyways, the passageway leads into a small closed-off section of sewers. The only other exit from those sewers, other than the house, or the church, I should say, is a water treatment plant. And the employees of that plant do not seem to have noticed anything unusual. So I believe the entryway itself is warded. But the entryway itself is a iron gate. And once you go through, you are apparently no longer fully on this plane. I'm guessing you're in Umbra at that point. And
interesting.
It's based off the 9 layers of hell. So make of that what you will. It's quite dangerous. I went there with a couple other mages who were prepared for it, and we got as far as the 5th layer and then beat a hasty retreat.
Sounds like a summer vacation.
Well, I have some ideas. See, the location itself, the church was in some state of disrepair as it had been abandoned for some time, but it's recently been renovated, or is still undergoing a few renovations. But I plan to make it into a chantry because, interestingly enough, the former owner apparently forged some kind of primal connection with the sub-dimension, or whatever you want to call it. There is a pentagram on the floor of the church which draws energy from it. It's a very weak node, but it is still a node. And it has the potential to become a very strong node. We believe if we were to clear out more of the subdimension, we would gain more power.
So, are you asking me to join your chantry and help clear out this thing? Or potential chantry, I should say.
Yes, though I'm not so much. I'm not worried about diving headfirst into that kind of danger just yet. It's been sealed off. It's not about to run amok. Though there might be a pair of zombies in the basement with our luck. Apparently, the bodies of the former owners of the house were somehow still around when the last group of mages exorcised the building, and they deanimated. But then when a certain mage, a lovely hermetic woman by the name of Cassie, decided that she was going to have her people renovate the place in anticipation of giving it up as a chantry. Very kind of them, by the way. Apparently, she thought it best to hide the bodies in the basement in front of the mouth of hell.
Well,
no one's been down there since this, and I've made sure the door is locked. And there's no chance of random bystanders wandering in. There is a slight ward about the place created by Cassie, which it's one of those nice little mental trickery things that makes people wonder if they left the oven on, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
They find reasons not to approach. I've got a couple trinkets to bypass the warding. In fact, if you're interested in the idea so far, I can give you one of them.
Of course.
He pulls out a little
curiosity, and now you have my attention.
He pulls out a little trinket, which has got like a little purple gemstone on it. It's not valuable. It's just a little like charm bracelet type thing. He kind of winces, like, I didn't design these. Trust me, I'd rather have like a key card or something. But here you go.
I take it. I look at it. So I'm going to say it's probably in my best interest if I don't play with its molecular structure.
I honestly don't know. I didn't design it, but I don't know how that would affect its warding magic. We could always experiment on that at a later date.
Well,
I only have a very few of these trinkets, though. 6 in total, not counting the one that I'm using.
I'll tell you what. Let's play with it whenever it's not been a necessity.
Yes, that sounds like a good idea.
In my pocket. Sorry.
It's all good.
Yeah.
Okay, so I had a couple ideas as far as this chantry goes. Obviously, I tried explaining some of this to Aiden. He got the concept, but he had a few questions, which I had to answer. He's not very fond of the term magic, though he understands there are mages, and he hates that term as well. There are mages who do similar things to us, but using more mythical styles, hermetics, verbena, etc. He wanted to know if I wanted any of them to join the chantry. I'm not prejudiced against anyone who uses tools other than science, but there are many chantries in the city right now, all of whom are open to the more mythic mages. There are none that are specifically open to technological ones. In fact, the only other technologically based mages I have found live in virtual exile. The intern and a certain techno shaman from the Dream Speakers. So I figured if we're not part of their chantries, we might as well have our own.
No, that's completely rational thought process. Especially considering the fact that there is a surprising amount of mythic mages in the middle of New York City. If you don't mind me saying.
Well, it bears mentioning that the technocracy is here as well, though that shouldn't surprise anyone.
You can tell that Dr. Osborne just kind of groans at the mere mention of them.
Yes, I'm only saying this because I don't want this to come up later and have someone else tell you, and then you suddenly not trust me.
Mm-hmm.
I had my first 3 days as an awakened individual in the tender care of Iteration X.
Okay. No, he looks at you kind of not so much of a scorn, but more of think of the look of a concerned parent.
He kind of
waves.
He kind of waves it off a little bit, like, no, I was rescued.
Okay.
You see, I have a little souvenir from the experience. He kind of taps his head. If you ever wonder why you don't see me using a computer most of the time to access things, that's why. But it was reprogrammed from the ground up by a very talented individual, so it's no longer a threat. It has no access to their networks. It's essentially been rooted. It's safe.
Says, listen, I have no problem with any individuals or anybody who used to associate with them. If you have any gadgets in you or whatnot, you're not with them now, right?
No, though they keep trying to get me to join.
Well, if that's the case, I have no personal qualms with you. It's more of a matter of
Speaking of, if you happen to meet if you happen to meet a woman by the name of Violet, well, actually, no, I should take that back. There are 2 women of that name. One of them is an ecstatic. She has purple hair. But she's an ecstatic. You'll know her pretty obviously. The other is, well, let's just say if there's a specific individual who keeps trying to recruit me, it's her. She's never offered any form of physical force or anything else. She's actually been rather polite. I'd like to keep it that way. So if I'm not telling her about this place, but knowing her, she'll find it eventually. So if she ever comes calling, just use your best judgment. Bear in mind, we don't want to cause a raiding party to appear. until we're ready to handle it.
Dr. Osborne kind of chuckles and he says, "You know, I think from the past couple of days, Conrad, you can tell that I'm a man of science. I'm certainly not a man of brute force, as it were. The way that I see it is that they're splitting some very fine hairs between virtual adepts, Etherites, and the Technocratic Union. The way that I've always saw it is that we respect science. We study science. We want to know more about science. It's an art. The way that I've always saw the Technocratic Union is they want to subjugate science. They want to dominate science. And that's where the ideological differences fall. I don't agree with them. If one's in my sight, I will react, politely, kindly, but we will not be friends sharing a cup of coffee later, as it were."
Oh no, I wouldn't expect that either.
But it's kind of
I don't plan on inviting them over for tea. I don't plan on forging an alliance with them. He says that kind of vehemently, as if you're not sure what the reasoning is behind it. It seems like there's something more involved in that statement. It's like, I'm not trying to forge any kind of deeper connection. I'll be content if they'll simply not attack us, and hopefully not attack anyone else either. But I think they have other things to worry about at the moment. Well, in any case, ideas. Now that I've let that cat out of the bag. Okay, so if this is to be a technological chantry, and Aiden was interested in this idea as well. He has one of the trinkets. The place isn't fully renovated yet. Once we're able to consider it livable, anyone's free to move in. Trust me, I'll be the first one in. Okay. We may need to set up some basic amenities like internet. Water is easy enough to repair, but yeah, we would need internet and possibly some local power source. We could always draw off the grid, but draw too much energy from the grid and it raises a couple red flags. In any case, if it's to be a technological chantry, there's going to be a point where we'll need to dispense with the mythic trappings. A pentagram in the floor doesn't really mesh, and having to constantly figure out how to interpret their runes and so on is going to be a bit annoying. Not to mention the whole Dante's Inferno thing. I don't mind having a subdimension in the basement. It's got a sort of charm, but not that.
We can cross the subdimension whenever, we can cross the subdimensional bridge whenever we get to it.
Oh, I'm not planning on doing it anytime soon. I was actually thinking we might, whenever we got around to it, find a little bit of assistance in that regard. You see, the techno shaman I mentioned is a fellow by the name of Corey. I've had a little trouble getting hold of him for the last couple of days, but we spoke briefly about the possibility. He's interested in joining for obvious reasons. But one thing we discussed was that in the realm of Umbra, all things exist. I mean, that's a nice truism, I suppose, but just because it exists doesn't mean you could find it. But I had something of an idea. Apparently, in the digital web, there are artificial intelligences out there. And I'm not necessarily going to say that they're all trustworthy or that we'd want to associate with all of them, but I could think of worse things to have guarding one's network. It would be worth investigating at some point, especially if we found one. We could always design one ourselves, don't get me wrong. Get a couple adepts together and we can easily do it, even without magic.
Says, listen, if I were to join, I can certainly help with all the hardware aspects. I'll certainly leave most of the software aspects to the professionals.
Now, I think Aiden's honestly better at programming than I am, so he'd likely take the lead in any such regard, but I'd be able to assist. I'm more of a cyberneticist myself.
I could probably take a crack on how to get some power source to our place without drawing too much suspicion.
That would be helpful.
Say, check on that one. Water source is pretty simplistic. That should be hard. In a church, right?
It's an abandoned church, yes. Out of character as far as finding anything else, I'd have to talk to Trent because he's the one in charge. But I seem to recall it's an abandoned church.
So the number of people in this chantry will be you, me, preferably Aiden, the quarry gentleman.
And at the moment, that's all. I thought about the possibility of inviting the intern, but he seems rather standoffish. A good person to talk to, very helpful, but...
Of course. Well,
don't get me wrong, if he were interested, I'd think he would make the place 10 times as defensible just from his general experience, but he could also attract enemies of his own.
Of course. Would you like any hardware guardians?
In the long term, most certainly. In the short term, I couldn't even tell you.
I mean, I've been playing with the idea of automatons in my personal workshop, or in other words, what I call it, my studio apartment back home. If I were to possibly get one up and running, I'm not going to say that it's going to be a defensive powerhouse, but it could certainly get the job done.
There might be alternatives for that. I was thinking a couple of basic drones would likely be more of a deterrent than anything else. Honestly, until we find some people who know how to. Well, I don't know about you, but I'm not much in the way of combat.
Nor am I. That's why
Aiden apparently has a gun and knows how to use it, but that's more than I can say.
Well, I have a gun myself. It's mainly for self-defense purposes. It's a little tiny 5-shooter. I would personally not like to be in a firefight with it.
Nor would I. My talents don't even... Not to be blunt, but my quote-unquote magic basically lets me... I can scan things. I can analyze things. I'm very good at that, and I'm getting better at it. But I'm not going to be able to influence a fight with my magic beyond telling people, oh, hey, that person's over there. Look out. There's someone behind you, and so on and so forth.
He chuckles like, yeah. One of my favorite shows as I was a kid was Transformers, and my favorite character was Wheeljack. And he was always the guy who would like hang back and work on science shit while everybody else fought. And I think the analogy kind of works with me in those regards. I can fight if I have to, but I really don't want to.
It most likely would apply to me as well. But eventually we'll all need to learn the most basic of self-defense maneuvers. But hey, you know what? It's not a priority right now. It's not something I would even worry about for right now. Priority is to get the place up and running and get people moved in, and then we can start working on whatever we need to work on. I'm sure Aiden will be a source of constant inspiration.
Well,
and that yawn was in character as well.
I'll tell you what, you got a deal. I don't know too many people in this town. I could use the friends wherever I can get them.
Fair enough. And if you happen to meet anyone of a technological bent, forward them my way, and I can see what I can do. Because I definitely think we could. 4 is a good number, but there's always room for another person or two, especially if the node has a chance to become stronger.
Fair. All right. Well,
and eventually I'm sure we'll be able to compare notes on what our specific skill sets are. It always helps to know what one's allies are capable of.
Oh, of course. think for now we can kind of leave it off of you can certainly handle the software and I can handle the hardware.
Yes, that part I understand.
Yeah. But if you don't mind for now, I think we're both pretty tired. We might need to call it a day.
Yes, the coffee doesn't look like it's effective as it should be.
Tragically not. You see, after you have an addiction like me, you eventually start to build up an immunity.
And then you
Resistance,
just
I
need the
should
coffee
say.
to. Then you don't use the coffee to get awake. You use the coffee to not fall back asleep.
Fair.
Yeah. Well,
All right.
in any case, I'm going to. Here's the address for the place. I will.
Thank you.
Like I said, you're free to check it out. Just don't go into the basement, whatever the hell you do, because again, for all I know, there's 2 zombies there. I'd hate to have you get eaten. And yeah, beyond that, feel free to take a look.
That's fair, bud. I don't want to get eaten myself, so I'll tell you what. I'll stay up top. Matter of fact,
Sounds like a plan.
if there's an attic, I'll take the attic.
For all I know, there might be a bell tower, but in any case, I'll have to go take a look at the place again. In any case, with that, Conrad just kind of gets up, shuts down his workstations after saving his progress and everything, and starts heading out.
Dr. Osborne kind of just like shuts off the lights, locks up everything good and tight, and heads on back to his apartment.
And with that, seems like a good place to end our scene. Thank you, players for players, watchers for watching, and good night.